Have you ever seen those pieces of resin where they've got that amazing color shift throughout and wondered how did they create such an amazing finish? Well, I'm going to teach you how we do that, and let's just get started. All right, so step one is let's go over everything that you're going to need to create this project. So firstly, you're going to need your silicone mold. I've chosen a skull mold, but you can use any silicone mold that will work on anything. I just like the way that it works with the silicone mold. The other thing that's crucial is you'll need some color shift and metallic powder. This is our ResiArt mauve, red, orange, yellow that we're using today to create this effect. You can use any of the colors. We have all different ones available. We will also need a black tint. So I'm using our black ResiArt Black Abyss tint. You can either use a tint or you can also use our silver black metallic powder. That will work also, but I just like the black tint the best. We will be using our Resi Clear Resin. Now I'm using Resi Clear because this is a smaller mold. If I was doing a bigger mold, I would use our Resi Cast. That will allow me to pour in bigger molds and things like that. So with our Resi Clear, it's a 2:1 mixing ratio and it's in volume, not weight. So that's really important to mention because I know that can be different for different types of resin. So I will mix that up shortly, and you need a little brush in order to brush your pigment onto your mold, which I'm going to show you how I do that. Now people use different types of brushes. I'm just using like a makeup brush. I have a whole heap of these that I've got. I find it works the best, but some people use eyeshadow brushes and things like that, but I like this one. It works really, really well. Anyway, let's get started. I love this technique so much because it's really easy to do. And it was probably one of the first things that I ever attempted when working with resin. So I think you're going to love how this works out. So firstly, what I do is I'm going to turn my mold inside out. Now you don't have to do this step, I just prefer it, but it does make it a little bit tricky when folding it in. But regardless, however depending on your mold, if your mold is a flat mold, then you won't obviously need to turn it in the wrong way. I'm going to put gloves on because the powder is a little bit like goes everywhere, so I'm going to look like a fairy after this, but that's okay. Kind of just because it's so fine, it gets everywhere. So I'm going to put my gloves on just to, like, I don't know, make it easy. You don't have to wear gloves for this part, you do for your resin. Okay, so now that my mold's inside out, I'm grabbing my metallic color shift pigment. I'm just going to open that up. So gorgeous, love, love. And I'm just grabbing my brush and I'm going to give you a close-up of this one. I'm grabbing my brush, I'm just dipping my brush into my pigment. Now I kind of like to tap off excess, kind of like when you do eyeshadow. If you've ever done eyeshadow, if you haven't, that's okay too. Just kind of tap off the excess because you don't want too much going down at one time. And all I do is like brush it on, okay? So I'm just brushing away. I want this as pigmented as I can get it. But again, you'll notice if you have a lot too much, you'll end up with like some dusty powder. I don't want that. I just want the solid color on the mold. So I want it all to be consistent and I want enough on there. If you don't put enough on there, so like here, for instance, you'll see, you can still see the mold through it. It's going to come out a bit patchy, so we want to make sure we have a consistent flow all over the mold. I'm just gonna do his head and then I will do around his eyes and his face, and then I'm gonna flip him the other way. You can already start to see the color shift, hopefully, in the camera on the mold. There's one more step that really makes this pop. So just keep brushing, brush away. This is what you want. You don't want any clumps of powder anywhere. You want it to be literally just on there. Do you know what it reminds me of? And it almost is the same kind of thing. When you get those chrome nails and they paint your nails and then they put the chrome on top, they brush it on. This is almost the same, basically the same kind of process, but just on your mold. So again, I'm just going to do around his face before I flip him in the right way, because some of those crevices will be hard to get to once I flip him in the right way. As you can see, it's just, if you see a consistent coverage, then you know you're doing a good job. You don't want excess, you want it all to be in there, but you just want it all to be covered. Okay. I'm about to flip him in the right way because I don't want to put marks in the other sections. So I'm going to flip him before. Okay, we flipped. Now we're going to just keep filling in the rest of the colour. Oops, that was a bit of excess that I want to just make sure, if you do get any excess, you spend that time brushing that excess in and picking it up and moving it around. Don't leave any excess in there. You don't want any puddles of powder. It just ruins the whole project. You might find that you want to like fold it out if there's any creases. This all depends on the mold that you choose as to how you get it all in there, but just make sure it's all consistent. Sorry, put a little bit extra in here just to speed it up a little bit. But if you do put too much in there, so there's quite a bit in there, you can see the powder, it's okay, just make sure you brush it all out. Okay, so now that it's all brushed in and I'm happy with that, I'm ready to mix up my resin. The reason I didn't mix up my resin earlier is because it has a 45-minute pot life and I didn't want to start that pot life timing while I was doing that, brushing it out, just so that my resin wasn't setting while I was making it up. All right, let's mix up. Okay, so I'm using my Resi Clear Resin, and like I said earlier, it's a 2:1 mixing ratio by volume, not by weight. So let me show you how I mix up. If you've been here before, you can always skip past this little section, but if you're not sure how to mix up resin 2:1 mixing ratio, stick around because I'm going to show you how to measure it out and make sure that it's precise. Okay, so I've got my mixing ratio cup. It is a 2:1, it has a 2:1 section. Which I look for here, and all I'm going to do is I'm actually mixing up quite a bit of resin, so this is a really good one to demonstrate. I want to mix up 250 mils, so I'm mixing up to my 6 line on my 2 and my 1. So again, I've just left my gloves on because that's super important whenever mixing up resin. Do not work with resin without your gloves on, and do make sure they're the nitrate. I don't exactly know how it's said, but do make sure you use the proper mixing gloves. Standard gloves just don't cut it. These are chemical resistant so that nothing will seep through them. So invest in proper gloves when working with resin. Okay, so let's start this mixing process. Time to put my part A, which is my 2 part. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to make sure that I'm in my 2 column, and because I'm mixing up 250 mils, I want to go to my 6 line, just underneath that 6. Okay, so let's pour this in. Slow and steady is super, super important because too much is not good. Okay, I'm right at that 6. Perfection. And now I'm going to grab my part B. Okay, and my part B is my 1 part. So I'm just gonna come underneath the 1 here to the nut just under the 6. So I'm just gonna pour straight on top. The reason I like to use a mixing ratio cup as opposed to working out my mixes in 2 separate cups and pouring them together is there's always going to be leftover residue in each cup and your measurements might be slightly out. Whereas this, I'm putting both parts in the 1 cup, no room for error. Okay, let's do it. So I'm going to pour on top to the second 6. Now what you will notice is you will see a separation between the part A and the part B. It's really noticeable here that my part B is sitting on top of my part A. This is why the next step is super important. I'm gonna stir this for 4 to 5 minutes. This will ensure that both parts are completely mixed. If I don't do this process and I don't take this time to mix those 2 parts together, I may end up with uncured resin, like a sticky finish or something along those lines. So this part is super, super important. So let's mix it up. Trust me, take the time now because you cannot fix your project if you have sticky uncured resin. You cannot take it back. All right. So as I'm stirring, you may still notice that there's a separation. You may see little ribbons in the resin as you're stirring. The resin will go completely clear once it's mixed in completely together. And all I'll do is I'll also scrape down the sides of my cup, and I am touching the bottom of the cup as I'm stirring because it's super, super important. I am not stirring too quickly or all of those things because I don't want to incorporate any extra bubbles in my resin. So I'm taking my time with this process. Trust me, it's worth it. You do not want to waste your project that you're creating just because you rushed it. Okay, we good. Okay, so the next step here is that we are going to put our black tint into this resin. So let's do that. Okay, so with our black tint, we don't use too much of this. I literally will put my paddle pop stick in, give my black tint a stir, and then I'll just add that paddle pop stick into my resin. Because it is so pigmented, you don't need a lot, but do be mindful. Oh, have a look at that, that's really cool as it mixes together. Do be mindful that you do not want to add more than 3% of the black tint to your resin. You don't need it for starters, and it will affect the curing of the resin if you add any more than 3%. I love this black, it's so black. So black. Okay, I'm just making sure I take my time to stir this in as well to make sure it's fully through. Now, in case you're wondering why I'm tinting it black, you can tint it other colors or leave it clear, but I love the black effect because it gives such a vibrant finish when I demold. So when you see this piece, when I'm finished, you'll understand why I've chosen black to be the background behind the color. It really pops. If I had left it clear, it will kind of look like how I brushed it on the mold. Okay, so now I've mixed my resin together with its black. It's time to pour it into my mold. It really is this simple. Let's get ready. So I've got my mold ready and I'm going to pour my resin in there. So let's go. Again, kind of pouring slowly is a great way to go. And that'll just stop any air bubbles from the pouring process. Okay, We're almost there. Beautiful. Okay, now it's all ready to sit and cure overnight. But because I didn't want to leave you all hanging, I have one that I prepared earlier that we're going to demold together and show you exactly what it looks like once this process is finished. Okay, this is the most satisfying and tricky part. Let's demold our skull together. So, okay, here we have him. Look at that color shift. He looks insane. Now, if I hadn't have used the black in the background, he would be very translucent in color, not so solid. And if I used a white, it changes the color again. So you can experiment with all the different ways that you can actually make these color shift resin projects. Okay, so what do you guys think? I love how this skull turned out, and we have so many color options that you can use this effect on. So if you try this, please make sure you leave a photo in the comments because I'd love to see your projects. Or if you've done something like this before, please feel free to share that with us too. Now that's all for me for this video. I hope to see you in the next one. Make sure you like and subscribe and follow us on all our other social platforms. I'd love to see you over there too. Have a great day. See ya.